Very special guest among us, okay? If you don't already know him, I'd like to introduce to you the amazing Brian Hassett. Let me tell you a few things about Brian Hassett. At 17 years old, he was working and touring with the band Yes. At 19 years old, he worked with Bill Graham in producing the 1981 North American Rolling Stones tour. He's one of the leading authorities in the world on Jack Kerouac and really all the beat writers, because he's been researching them and he's been writing about them for at least the last 30 years. Brian's written 6 books, including The Hitchhiker's Guide to Jack Kerouac. He's written numerous articles which have been published in many prominent periodicals, including one article which I really love called The Power of the Collective, which was published in Rolling Stone magazine and which he performed here at Bradstock last year. Brian has befriended Edie Kerouac, Jack Kerouac's wife, and he became a very good friend of Carolyn Cassady, Neil Cassady's wife. In fact, Carolyn Cassady has a quote, which is one of my favorite quotes. She would say many times, she would say, quote, "Brian gets things done," she would say. And the more I get to know Brian, the more I realize he is a doer, and he's a personal inspiration to me because all the things that he's accomplished in his life and all the things that he's doing. He's a doer and a thinker. He worked at MTV for many years as the aide-de-camp to the chief executives there. I could go on and on and on, but after attending Bradstock last year, he wrote a beautiful essay entitled Imaginestock, and it's in our program this year, and I encourage each and every one of you to read Imaginestock by Brian Hassett, and maybe he'll even recite it while he's here today. We'll see, okay? So, all the way from outside Toronto, Canada, let's have a very special, warm Bradstock welcome for Brian Hassett.
Fire lights and smoking nights and splashes of dripping paint, jazz explosions and constant commotions. Leave it to Beaver, this ain't. Thank you, Dennis, for that intro. Thank you, Bradstock, for this scene. David Amram coined this phrase a long time ago about scenes like this that he was part of all over the world, called them floating universities. And every time you go to a place like this, you're meeting scholars, and I know there's a lot of University of Bradstock PhDs in this house, and we're all learning from each other. And so here was something I riffed on his floating universities idea. This is in that Rolling Stone Book of the Beats. Give me your befuddled masses, your rejection slips, pink slips, verbal slips, all. Knock down the gates, throw open the bars, the artists are having a ball. Teach me, show me, let me in. Challenge me, push me, help me win. Athletes have their team and suits can wear the firm, but making art keeps you home alone, and Bradstock's the place you turn. Solo suffering totally blows, so into the sea you dive, searching for souls who swim like you and act at least vaguely alive. With deep-sea whales you plunge the depths, with freshwater poets you school, with coral reefers you spark the sea, drinking in dreams from the pool. Yeah! Woo-hoo! All right, so yeah, last year I've been invited to Bradstock by the great Kevin Twigg for about 25 years, and it was a long way away, and I never made it until last year. Dennis called me, spent an hour on the phone explaining the whole thing, answering all my questions, and finally, tipped the scale and got me here. And then I'm a writer, and so I had to write about this thing. It's so freaking amazing, but the whole thing was you got to keep it on the down low. So I couldn't call it Bradstock. Had to change the names to protect the guilty, and but I had to write about this thing because it's so freaking amazing. amazing. And I haven't heard anybody point out, this is always on the Labor Day long weekend. And there's so much labor that goes into this thing. People are working on it all year round to plan the next one. All of the stage, this stage, that stage, all the stages, all the artwork, all the stuff that's created by the vendors. This is really a labor-intensive event. And so that we're having it on Labor Day weekend is kind of cool. So in the program this year, they printed my little riff on it from last year. So here it is. First time ever read into a microphone, that's for sure. So imagine, if you will, a place where music and love fill the air, and every person works for free to build a utopian kingdom. Imagine a secret island hideaway whose location is only shared to people who have earned an invitation by a lifetime of good deeds. Imagine a wonderland forest filled with fluttering fairies and giggling mystics who make magic happen with the tap of a wand. Fantasy lands do exist beyond fiction and films, where living, breathing human beings practice the supernatural for the benefit of all. I was invited to such a place and can confirm its existence, if not its location. I remember tall trees and a lake, and I remember wandering for hours through campsites so elaborate you'd think they'd been built over months, not in a day. And I remember multiple stages, from the base of a Yasgur's Farm-like natural amphitheater to hidden away cabins in the woods on the edge of cliffs, and a dozen master musicians playing together in one-time ever ensembles, sharing Marley and Dylan and the Beatles and the Dead. And I saw an army of carpenters, not one of them paid, building out of a love of creation, a giant stage befitting a dream. Then breaking it all down in one afternoon so we could scatter and leave no clue anyone was ever here. I saw the best minds of my generation, forging friendships out of thin air that changed lives forever, and crafting art that changed perception in the present. I saw costumes that could have been in blockbuster movies, brought from 1,000 closets, envisioned for a year, sewn and woven together, from Dr. Seuss hats and lit up umbrellas to painted feet and Gandalf staffs. The first 2 hours I walked around jaw-dropped, unable to speak. I heard the best music ever recorded wafting over the lands, from giant sound systems to homey campsites. I met the friendliest people beaming like they just drank from the fountain of ecstasy and were sharing their joy breathlessly. I spoke to the ghosts of Bill Graham and Jerry Garcia, and they were just as ebullient as you'd imagine they'd be. And if this magic had a source, I noticed an inordinate number of Irish leprechauns seeming to be in charge. The Irish, the poets, the pranksters of history, the playful, the giggling, the masters of mischievous, the spinners of language and tellers of tales, the roaming minstrels of old, playing songs in the present to collectives of children, no matter their age. I jammed with 90-year-olds and 9-year-olds and couldn't tell the difference. I talked old verities with teenagers and young music with seniors. I saw a 12-year-old boy buy Abbey Road from a box of old albums and walk down the path staring wide-eyed into its cover like all us old-timers grew up doing. I talked to people who long ago brought their young children to this and now were there with their grandchildren. Imagine a festival where every penny of the ticket sales is given to charities for kids with special needs to help not only the children, but their parents as well. Imagine a festival where everyone from the rock star performers backstage to the front gate ticket takers were equally as friendly and equally paid not a cent. Imagine all the people sharing all the work, living for today, and living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Cheers. Okay, the bus. I can't believe the bus is the theme this year. The original bus, I'm sure some don't know, was bought by Kesey, the author, in 1964, so 60 years ago. 63, they went to New York for the opening of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest on Broadway. And the World's Fair was being built in Queens.
64.
And Ken Kesey and George Walker were driving back across the country in their station wagon, and we got to come back for that World's Fair. And they got back to Kesey's place in La Honda, and they had more people than would fill their station wagon. Remember station wagons? And so they decided to buy a school bus, and that's what they did, and painted it in the front yard. And that was the first school bus that was used for these pranksterish festival type events. And by the way, do you remember in the millennial when all the news organizations were doing the 100 best that and the top 10 this? Time magazine, of all unhip places, did the top 10 buses of all time. And they picked Kesey's Further bus as the most important bus in history. Like Rosa Parks was number 2. And the London double-deckers were number 3. Anyway, when I was 21 years old, there was the largest gathering of the beat novelists and poets ever in history in Boulder, Colorado. And I hitchhiked there from Vancouver, and it had like Timothy Leary, Abby Hoffman, and all of the living beats, and Ken Kesey. And that was the guy I wanted to get to know, and I did. And so he invited me back to his house in Oregon on the way home. And so when I got there to Kesey's house, you know what I wanted to see? The original 1964 International Harvester. Finally, I was here. After first reading about it so many years ago, gotta be 5 by now, a quarter of my life ago, here I was at last, one-on-one with the psychedelic magic carpet. It was like Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid or something. This giant, man-made creation outdoors with some intangible, magnetic, mystical, mythical, reverential presence. And yes, damn it, it does look alive. It is alive. The windshields for eyes, the front grille for the nose, the fat bumpers were the smiling cheeks, the mirrors, the ears, and it's wearing a round white cap on its head. Or maybe it's bald, but there's no doubt it's a person. So of course, the first thing I do is climb inside to see Neal's wheel. If only we had his 49 Hudson to put next to it, or maybe that Travel Bureau Cadillac. But until then, this is the only wheel we know of that transgenerational driver ever worked. Maybe this wasn't a church, but I'm not going to say it wasn't a shrine. There was something sacred, spiritual, transportive, and weird about being in the Holy Goose cockpit. This Cody Pomeray of the next generation, this muse for 2 masters. And it's funny how the thing was paint covered from stem to stern, just like the graffitied New York subways I rode every day. Every square inch covered in some crazy color. In fact, layers and layers of crazy colors. And I began hearing Keith Moon's claves bringing Magic Bus into the soundtrack. And the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour began screening on the front window. And I looked out the side, and there was the Partridge Family driving by singing, "Come on, get happy." And suddenly I flashed on my own school bus trip across the country in 1978 with a bunch of Winnipeg musicians and pranksters. And how all of that, and so much more, was inspired by this exact terrestrial spaceship I was standing inside. "I'm on the bus!" I blurted out and laughed at myself, making sure the spirits could hear me. I couldn't believe I was here. And then I started thinking, nobody else would either. I had to get a picture somehow. Aha, a mirror, the only shot, the whole shot, the Gregory shot. But the inside rear view was already gone. So I went back outside and began to twist, petrifiedly, carefully, slowly, so slowly, could you imagine? Yikes, Neal's ancient, delicate driver's side mirror in its swivel until my frame could fit perfectly in its. And I started thinking about all the lessons I'd internalized from Kesey and from that book about him, as he coyly refers to electric Kool-Aid acid test. And having just seen him on TV a few months ago, goofing with Garcia on that goofy Tom Snyder show, You Trade Off. And reading every interview or article on him in Rolling Stone or anywhere else I found, and how my time with him these past few weeks had reinforced every preconceived great notion and then some. And about how every event I'd produced since I was 16 years old was inspired by the acid tests. How my whole life had been a way of recreating that group spirit of collective, crazy, unrestrained fun. How he taught me it was okay to go beyond what you were scared of. Not only going through the door, but playing when you were on the other side. The openness of possibility. Embracing the goodness in everyone you meet. Engaging them, playing with them, pranking with them, tootling the multitudes all life long. And how there was a responsibility that came with the gift of magic. If you got the cosmic giggle and could see the golden light, let alone knew how to dance in it, it was incumbent upon you to share it with as many people as you could. Woo! Not everyone sees the grand prank of life, but it's our job to shine the light in the strangest of places for people to look at it right. And if you get it, you have to grab it, share it, push it a little bit further than it's gone before. You have to lead. Yeah, that's what Kesey taught me, leading. Inclusion on the bus, which is a bigger concept than on the road. This was about all of us, not just some of us. Jack writ the road, but this is the road writ large. And it's our duty to ride on and drive that bus further.
Yeah! Woo! Thank you, Brian.
Right on, cheers, thanks. Okay, so I'm just gonna do, I got a little ode to Jack and a little ode to Neal. Jack Kerouac and Neal Cassady. Two guys that birthed this whole thing. Kerouac was a principal influence on Kesey, of course, and Neal drove both Jack's car and Ken's bus. So,
that's pretty hot.
So here's a little ode to Jack. It was written for his centennial a few years ago.
Brian asked me to do this because you weren't here yet. And he's like, he showed up. It's okay.
Jack fights back from off the beaten track. Still alive at 105, as if any of us ever wondered if that would happen. After his track star sprint through the pages of history, seeing around corners like Neal at the wheel, knocking over grammar cops and blowing past the door stops to hidden darkened jazz joints, puffing on a mez joint, never missing the point of dancing with the mad ones and singing with the sad ones and drinking with the bad ones and skipping past the madhouse and steering clear the jailhouse, heading for his mom's house to write another epic, soaring while he's manic, catching all the magic of mysteries dark and vast. He channeled the spirits till the last. He hitched the row, had a blast. He wrote it down really fast. And now it's 50 since he passed. Let's hoist his flag up our mast. Salute the work he amassed. Have you ever seen a cannon so vast? So let us all take a moment to thank the Pollard for the books, the young Prometheans for the camaraderie, the Columbia Cabal for the new vision, Neil Cassady for the letter, Bill Canastra for the paper, Joan Haverty for the apartment, Malcolm Cowley for the championing, Gilbert Milstein for the reviewing, David Amram for the playing, Allen Ginsberg for the everything, Bradstock for the celebrating, you for the being, we for the seeing, the glowing light of the golden eternity. Thank you, Jack, for all you shone.
Thank you, Brian.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so Neil Cassady, I mean, I hope everybody here knows who he was, but they probably don't. But, you know, he was the main muse and inspiration for Kerouac, and then lo and behold, he falls in with Ken Freak and Kesey. The guy, what Jack was to the 50s, Kesey was to the 60s, and Neil Cassady drove both those guys around. And I became good friends with his wife and his kids, and so I had to do something for him. So this is I Knew, Not Knew Neal Namaste.
They were 10 minutes long.
I never met the fastest man alive, but I've gone coast to coast with him and back.
That was smart.
I never saw his blue eyes sparkle, but I saw his eyes in Friends Who Burned. I never had him read my mind, but I read his mind in Letters Home. I never saw his skin grow gray, but I saw the grays he colored bright. I never heard his manic voice, but heard him speak in every jazz club, go! I never took a joint he passed, but heard he was a bogey before there was a Bogart. I never had him drive my car, but I learned his speed with the windows down. I never saw him walk into a room, but he taught me how to walk onto a stage. I never saw him make love to a woman, but I knew a woman he loved for life. I never saw him perform with the dead, but I heard him through them 1,000 nights over. I never rode shotgun as he cut around corners, but I caught the trick and mastered both seats. I never knew the man named Neil, but I never knew a time I didn't.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, so Woodstock, right? Bradstock was birthed out of Woodstock 94. And Brad's out there somewhere. I can see him from here. Hey, brother. Thanks for hosting and getting us started. So this is... I wrote a book about Woodstock 94, which was unbelievable, not to be confused with Woodstock 99. And so this is the climax of the book, and it's Woodstock, and it's this, and I'll leave you with this.
I said, well, if I'm going to make any of them, I have to.
As Peter Gabriel sang in the winds of change, blowing through the trees, through our souls, through ourselves, through the world, behind our sails, behind you now, behind tomorrow when you rise, behind your comeback when you fall, behind your dreams unseen by all.
Unfortunately, I'm still working.
This is your Woodstock. These are your dreams. He said, of the ones that come true on top of the mountain, within your heart, until they spark in a neck-tingling lades dancing, shiver me timbers that spikes your soul and strikes your life and makes it whole, becoming the goal of your character's role. No one else sees it but you. You got it, you see it. Nobody else but you. You know it. Nobody else, you see it. Nobody else inside you. Now, flickering, flickering, flickering now. And what happens now is up to you. Woo! As the mystic minstrel waved goodbye. And what happens now is up to you. A drum beats in the distance. And what happens now? A drum beats. A drum beats inside. And what happens now is up to you. A drum beat begins to fade to cheering as candles flicker. And out of the candles flicker, glowing and growing from the field of life, the field at night, a glowing ring of fire begins to take over. A flaming ring of flickering peace. A raging circle of dancing men. A rising voice of singing women. 1,000 voices merging together. Human voices rise. Rise. Rising above the field. Human voices rise. Crying out on a limb of pious pagans dancing in tongues around a circle of light. A sign of peace. A resounding choir rising from the field, rising, pulling us, pulling us, pulling us. God help us in to the chanting circle, to singing unbounded, to free me, free me, free me for real, free me for once. And all we are saying, all we are praying, all the spirits are swaying, the field all is one. All we are saying, John is here smiling. All we are saying, all we are swaying, locking arms, spinning faster, locking arms, spinning faster with the spirit still faster, arm in arm with God in the mud, spinning faster. And all we are saying, all we are swaying, all we are praying, it's all in our hands. And all we are holding, one and sister, brother, lover, all, one in a million to a million are one. In a mud splashing, arm locking, swirling dance twirl. And all we are saying is let's stay together. And all we are saying is joined at the heart. And all we are saying is kindness to all. And all we are saying is spitting together. And all we are saying is burning inside. And all we are saying is no turning back. And all we are saying is raging inside. And all we are saying is keep it alive. All we are saying is stoke the improbable, light the impossible, fan the invisible, be the invincible spirit you are. And boy, we got some great music and magic coming up here on this stage. Thank you, Mark. Peace. Forward, freedom.
I can just see.
Let's hear for Brian Hassett, everyone. Come on, one more time for Brian Hassett.
Good job.